The incoming president is also doubling down on his goal to buy Greenland, saying in part, quote, "I'm hearing that the people of Greenland are MAGA. Greenland is an incredible place and the people will benefit tremendously if and when it becomes part of our nation."
I want to throw that map back up of the Northern Sea Route potential that you can see up there. And I really want people to understand this, but I also, and most importantly, want people to internalize this. The Russians understand this. The Chinese understand this. You know who else does? President Trump. Look, Mahan understood that strategic geographic locations, like your choke points, like your straits, this is how you control maritime traffic. And if you control maritime traffic, you control trade. And if you control international trade, well, guess what? You can control the entire world. This is how the British Empire was built, based around these ideas. The concentration of force around. Why do you think the Suez Canal matters so much? Why do you think the Red Sea matters so much? The Houthis right now, off of the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, off of the Gulf of Oman, the Strait of Hormuz coming out of the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, depending on your flavor there, all the way down to the Straits of Malacca, cutting through Singapore into China. Look, why is Singapore a global power? Because it sits on a strait. Why did Hong Kong become an international power? Because it sits right at the mouth of the Pearl River Delta. Why did New York City become an international power the way it did? Because it became the finance capital of where the Erie Canal met with the Hudson, and where all the manufacturing of central the central cities, so the Midwest, was able to come out and then hit the Atlantic. It's all about international trade. If you control international trade, you control the choke points, you control the entire world. This is money, this is wealth, this is finance, this is the corridors of real power. And President Trump understands real power. That's why he's focused on all of this. That's, by the way, you think I'm like, oh, why does Mahan matter so much? Well, guess what? It was because of Mahan's writings that the Panama Canal was even built in the first place. This is actually something that's very well known. These theories were considered very influential in the arms race for World War I, as well as the buildup of the Japanese Navy going into World War II. And of course, we saw how powerful Japan was by having an incredibly strong Navy. Obviously, Japan is a very small nation, but through the power of the Navy, they were able to do so. And no, I am not biased just because I was in the Navy, but that is also one of the reasons that I joined the Navy in the first place, was because this was how I viewed the world as well. And it's clearly how President Trump is viewing this. You know how much? Here's a great question. Do you know how much of international trade is conducted over the sea right now? How much? Guess what? Over 90%. How much of your communications do you think are conducted by undersea cables right now? You know, okay, we know we have Starlink, we have all these satellites up there. So how many? What's the percentage? Again, over 95% are undersea cables. It's all based on the ocean. And so that's why, if you really want to understand where money, where power, where goods, where everything else come through, you understand the power of control over your own sea lanes. And there's no question, by the way, this is a huge reason that China wants control of Taiwan, because where does Taiwan sit? Oh, right on the main sea lane between South Korea, Japan, the Strait of Malacca, and the rest. If you understand maps, you can understand power. It's really that simple. And that's something that I've always tried to stress here on Human Events Daily. I know we do, the news of the day, but also it's just, this is something that if you really want to understand how the world works, you need to understand your sea lanes, and you need to understand your choke points. If you know your choke points, you'll understand the importance of the world. That's why the Houthis over there at the Red Sea right now are doing what they're doing. Why? Because the Red Sea is the choke point into Europe. If Europe wants their oil from the Middle East, well, guess what? It's got to come up through the Red Sea. If they want their shipping from China, if they want all that, it's got to come up through the Red Sea. But if the Northern Sea Route is built, then they don't need the Strait of Hormuz anymore, or the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, or the Red Sea, or any of these things, because they can go over the top. That's why Greenland is important. Not to mention, by the way, all of the potential resources that are sitting in Greenland and all the rest that are sitting in Canada. Now, I do want to say a couple of things on that. So I threw a tweet up on X earlier today that, or just before the show, saying, look, people are talking about, okay, does Trump really want, so Trudeau's out, and do we really want Canada to be the 51st state? And I'm going to be first to say no, not interested. The price is way too high. It's not something. It's honestly, it's just not something that it would make sense for the United States to annex or bring in any way. Same with Mexico. Just too many issues on both sides. Really, just way too many issues. I mean, certainly we want a strong trade relationship. We should be Canada's strongest trading partner, and we are Canada's strongest trading partner. But we also have to understand that the balance of trade needs to be necessary to make it across. So whatever services that we can provide to Canada, what should Canada be providing us with? That's right, natural resources, the abundant natural resources that exist in the Yukon, the oil that it's in Alberta, the shipping and the trade routes that are all available to us or potentially available to us, precious metals, et cetera, et cetera. It all needs to come our way. So that's what Canada is able to get, is going to provide us, and then we are going to in turn provide them with service, as well as, by the way, a nominal amount of military security, because of course it makes sense to have a military relationship with Canada, because that protects us from over-the-top threats, potentially from China, Japan, Russia, or others. Now, when it comes to Mexico, look, I mean, there's just not much there that we're really all that interested in, but there is a huge security issue that we have with the cartels that are operating transnationally on both sides of the border. So clearly, a limited military incursion or covert operations, special forces opportunities, activities could be used to take out those cartels. But I really think that's all about it. Also, by the way, the Gulf of Mexico, no more Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of America, it will be the Gulf of America. It always should have been the Gulf of America. We are going to be rectifying that. So Gulf of America, that's definitely something that's going to come in. And people will say, well, wait a minute, Posto, but I thought you said that, what about all this no overseas talk, no overseas? This isn't overseas. This is our backyard. These are actual direct impacts on the American people. These are direct impacts on our families, on my family, or on your family. This is how we can all live better and all increase a greater standard of living here within the United States. And it doesn't include these wars of adventure overseas. And by the way, you've heard me say today, I haven't said anything about war. I haven't said anything about this. No, there's plenty of ways economically to make all of this happen. You saw Don Jr. and some others traveled up to Greenland today, had a fantastic appearance down as well with down as well in the Panama Canal. There could be more issues, though. Unfortunately, there could be some more issues with the Panama Canal, and I do think with the Panama Canal situation, it might require a bit more leverage than just sending Don Jr. down there to get the Panamanians on board. But that's okay. That's okay, because Pete Hegseth and others have lots of ways to put leverage on the Panamanians to make sure that the control of the canal is conducted properly. And of course, we'll be making sure that we do that. I mean, keep in mind, I just want to double check, and producer Foz, producer Russ, if you guys can check with me, maybe ask Rock. I don't know. How many aircraft carriers does Panama have in their Navy? How many is it again? Is it because we have 12 at any given time, so certainly have 2 active aircraft carriers we could park on either end of it. So I just want to double check. Panama, I think off the top of my head, was it 3, 4? Oh, 0. 0 aircraft carriers. Okay, got it, right. And they folded in about a week's time, the last time the U.S. invaded, not too long ago, just a couple decades ago. So, just throwing that out there.